just a little rant about something I noticed on Twitter recently that just kind of boggles my mind. And just reflecting on different things I've heard on the radio recently and different things. I saw a tweet. One thing I like to search on Twitter is MST3K, one of my favorite shows, Mystery Science Theater 3000. So I saw a tweet while the elections were still going on. This woman, she wrote, she saw a commercial for Trump on Hulu, and she was like, well, I don't think the MST3K crowd is going to vote for Trump. I was like, what? What are you talking about? It's not a political show. It's not a, like, you can only watch the show if you have left-wing politics. I just don't understand. I mean, I know Frank Conniff is very vocal about his left-leaning politics on Twitter, and I've had exchanges with him on Twitter about it, but I don't care. There was a local radio show here recently, and they were talking about, entertainers being on the left, and this was a more right-wing show, and for sure right of center show, but the guest they had, I think, was more on the right. Local show was the Tom Cypher show, but they had guests on there, which were actually more entertaining than Cypher's. I don't mean any disrespect by that. I'm just saying, I guess I was spoiled in Richmond. Back when I was in Richmond, we had Doc Thompson was the local right-wing radio host, and I always said this guy belongs on national radio. And every now and then he would fill in for Glenn Beck, and as he did recently last week. And I was like, this guy is very talented. He's really got what it takes, and also he's open-minded. Which is something I appreciate. I met him once, Doc Thompson, and now he has a national show on the Blaze. So it's good for him. He earned it. He's a really talented fellow, and he really, got what he deserves. Even though, Richmond wasn't as kind to him as they should have been. He wound up leaving Richmond. I guess that's something that tends to happen there. That they lose good talent. So anyway, and I've back to what I was talking about, MST3K. Like this meme has been not a meme in the sense of a meme, but like this idea has just been. I've seen time and time again that somehow it's like, you can't appreciate the show. I mean, it goes back to like this idea that conservatives are not as intelligent, which is of course ridiculous, and it's really quite the opposite. I mean, I know plenty of politically conservative people who do appreciate MST3K, but back to this on the Tom Cypher show, the local Hudson Valley radio show. I don't remember who it was the guest speaker, but like he was saying that he had gone to a concert, Taylor Swift, and someone said to him, "Oh, how can you go to her concert? She's so left wing." I don't know much about Taylor Swift, but I always assumed that she's I think more like country music. I really don't follow very much current music except for Weird Al Yankovic. It's really just about all I'm really interested in as far as music today. I don't really even listen to much Jewish music, except for like the old Hasidic Nigunim, and Zmiras and things. And even that I don't really. I'd rather listen to a shir than listen to music in the car. But most of the time, just listen to talk radio. And I listen to both sides. I listen to NPR, which is on the left. I listen to the right-wing ones. My favorite is Glenn Beck, and my second favorite is Mark Levin, because both of them bring a historical perspective to what they're talking about. And I want to talk about that in my next video. But I really don't understand this whole idea that you have to be, I mean, you know, there's one Twitter account, which I love very much, and they have all kinds of things about, you know, horror and sci-fi movies and, you know, psychotronic movies. And, you know, the night after election, they're like, oh, if you're a Trump, if you vote for Trump, don't follow me anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, this is not a political arena. We're sharing our love of these movies and things. You know, I saw, you know, there was one fellow who I met at a convention who's, you know, lives in my general area, maybe about an hour away from me, and you know, we were friends on Facebook for a while, and I saw he unfriended me, and I'm wondering, is that because of my politics? I mean, I can understand, you know, there's, you know, friction with local politics, but my hope was that, you know, we could come together, you know, with the love of the monster movies and forget about the politics, and let, you know, this could be a source of unity for people. I just don't, you know, I don't understand it. I mean, like, and I wasn't a big Trump supporter, but, you know, like, you know, I was talking to someone at work yesterday, and it's interesting because, like I said, you know, even some of the Muslims who I work with told me that they voted for Trump, and here's a fellow, he's an Orthodox Christian, and he was like, you know, assuming that I would be against Trump, and like, he's like, oh, you know, like, Trump, you know, wouldn't, you know, he's not going to get impeached because then Pence would be worse than him. And I was like, I didn't answer back because, you know, I'm just respectful, and I don't want to get into arguments. I like to get along with everybody, but just, I don't understand. I mean, to me, I would have been much prouder to vote for Pence for president, as I've said many times, than Trump. And I don't agree with everything Pence, but, you know, how he handled this whole issue with what happened when he went to see Hamilton, and I would be, you know, I mean, I don't have money to go to Broadway shows, you know, my entertainment budget is very low, but I would be interested to see Hamilton, you know, maybe if they came up with a movie of it or whatever. And I don't care about the politics of people because I'm fascinated with that part of American history. You know, I had tweeted something halfway joking, you know, that, you know, the cast and crew of Hamilton, you know, were keeping the old democratic tradition of Democratic actors attacking duly elected Republicans in theaters. But I don't have a problem with what the statement that was made. But the people booing was certainly disrespectful. But Pence was very gracious. He told his children, that's the sound of freedom. I mean, and it's true. And that's, who could argue with that? Who could dislike a person who welcomes criticism in that way? I mean, that's certainly a trait that Trump could learn. I mean, because Trump has certainly said some really ridiculous things, and he certainly seems to have very thin skin, and you know, that's, you know, I mean, all the things like he said, Saturday Night Live should go off the air, like, that's a stupid thing to say, like, you know, I mean, we live in a free market society. If the sponsors want to support that, if they get enough bang for their buck, I mean, it should go off the air, like, what kind of nonsense? I mean, how many times did Trump himself host Saturday Night Live? I mean, even when he was running for president, he hosted Saturday Night Live. So I don't get it. Anyway, that's back to what I was saying, though. You know, like, I can appreciate, and this guy on the radio who was a guest on Tom Seifert's show, he said, you know, back when Jon Stewart was on The Daily Show, he used to love to watch The Daily Show. Now, that doesn't mean he agreed with the politics. And there's an actual political show with a political agenda, and he didn't, you know, he enjoyed the show, and I did too. I mean, but like MST3K, there's very little politics in there, and it usually tends to be pretty neutral when it comes to different sides of things. So I was, you know, I'm getting more and more aware, the political leanings of, the creators and actors. I've met most of them, and, I respect them. Joel Hodgson, he remembers me when I see him. We met him 3 times now, and the second time already, he was like, "Oh, didn't I meet you before?" And I was like floored. I was like, and he's a genuinely nice guy. He's really quite incredible, and all of them, when I met them, I was just touched by, their graciousness and everything, But anyway, that's besides the point. That's also my whole point. We're demonizing people who have different political views than us, and it's just, I don't understand. I only, fight back, and sometimes it's tongue-in-cheek, sometimes it's to show the ridiculousness, some of the comments I tend to make, whether, on social media or sometimes even in public, tend to be to demonstrate how ridiculous, some people are with their political rhetoric. It's just showing them a mirror of basically, what's the opposite of what you're saying. If someone on my side would say what you're saying, I'm saying that, just to basically be a mirror, to teach a lesson, to demonstrate that, particularly with the local politics, which so much of it has gotten the rhetoric has become so horrible, and also it's a deficit to freedom. It's really, I do really believe that there is an anti-freedom spirit in a lot of local politics here. It's not just about the Hasidic community. It's really about religious people in general. It's really about politically conservative people in general. It's really about private property rights. It's about libertarianism. That all of these things are being attacked. When the Hasidic community is attacked, really liberty is being attacked. Private property rights are being attacked. So many things are being attacked. It's not, religious freedom is being attacked. It's not just one particular group that's being affected by this. And it is true that there is, a liberal progressive agenda which is fighting against the Hasidic community. This is a very clear thing. It's targeted against the Hasidic community because the Hasidic community represents everything that the liberal progressive agenda hates, and it's most upsetting to them because so many people in the liberal progressive movement are secular Jews, and they had an agenda to wipe out Orthodox Judaism, and particularly ultra-Orthodox Judaism, and yet here we are, we're still here and we're growing, despite them quite often using the things that they brought into society against them, because they brought all of these social programs and things in order to control people and to fight against religion, really. We've seen, and to take over, change the meaning of religion to be social justice and things like that, and forget about, religious freedom and things, and to replace the family and all of these things. And we see, here's one community that's doing the opposite, because of the poor economy that the liberals have made by over-taxation and over-regulation. Many people in these communities are forced into these social programs, and yet they buck the system because they're doing it legally, but they're not becoming dependent on these people. They're not changing their values because of the way that other communities did, when other communities that became enslaved to these programs, they lost their fathers, they lost their families just fell apart. And here we have a community that has strong family values and was not destroyed by these programs. That really the goal of these programs was to destroy the families and to replace the family structure with the government, have the government be the new families. So when we see that, with Obamacare, this cradle to grave society, and that's why I, for one, even though unfortunately, ever since Obama came into office, the economy has gotten so bad that, and also this whole Obamacare thing and everything has just forced us to be, I wouldn't say maybe dependent on these things, but need them and be eligible for them. It wasn't the case, when Bush was in office. I was making a lot more money. Everything, the economy was much better and everything. Now things are starting to get better, but it's still very difficult, But all of that aside, that's not really my point here. My point here is let's get away from politics in certain arenas. I'm not a sports fan, but I heard that ESPN has become like a political network, and I'm like, seriously? I hear Rush Limbaugh talks about this, and like people don't want to watch ESPN anymore because like they're getting lectured on politics when they're trying to enjoy sports, and I feel like the same thing. Like, I want to have, to enjoy the type of entertainment I enjoy, which is, comedy, science fiction, and, Mystery Science Theater 3000 brings those together in an intellectual way, entertaining way, and I appreciate that, and I really enjoy it. But even other, political, I can appreciate, I can laugh at myself also, I appreciate, at least when Jon Stewart was on the Daily Show, this Trevor Noah is just, he's not very good. I don't know. There's so many more talented people, and I just don't understand why they picked him to take over the Daily Show. Not that I watch it so much, but, I would watch every now and then. It's on Hulu. Wasn't, Jon Stewart was on, even though I don't agree with his politics. He's talented and entertaining, and I like to see different sides of things. I like to hear different opinions. I don't want to be closed-minded. Like, that's the thing. Like, it seems like people on the left don't want to hear from the people on the right. And the thing is, if they would open up, they would see there's not that much a difference. I for one, like I said, I'm a big fan of Glenn Beck. I find him to be, almost like a prophetic voice. Not that I agree with everything he says, and more I'm finding things to disagree with him about, but that's fine. And he would be the first one to say that that's fine. It's not like, but nobody even gives Glenn Beck a chance. Like, when you mention Glenn Beck, people on the left are like, oh, he's a lunatic. And people who are like big Trump people are like, oh, he was against Trump, so he was for Hillary. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Just, here's a guy, he's open-minded. One of his best friends, here's a guy, he's a religious Mormon, and one of his best friends is Penn Jillette, who's an atheist, because they find common ground on libertarianism. But even without that, this is a man who is willing to talk to anybody. He's talking to Black Lives Matter. He talks to everybody, and he appreciates and he seeks to find common ground with everybody, and that is what I really appreciate about him. But most people won't. They just close their ears right away, and I listened this weekend. I listened to quite a few of his podcasts. I don't always listen. There's a guy, KJ, not to be confused with The Village in Orange County. He has a YouTube channel, The Scariest Movie Ever, and he talks a lot about how the media has a lot of hidden agendas in it, in movies and things, and he brought up something interesting. He's like, he said, The Simpsons, that's my show. How can, and like, that's how people, and that's like how I feel. The Simpsons is one of my favorites, and like, he's like, but like, you don't see the hidden agendas. And the thing is like, I don't know if I'm as much of a conspiracy theorist as this KJ fellow is. I certainly think a lot of the things he says have truth to it. But I don't know how insidious this is. I don't know. I mean, but the thing is like, it's yes and no, because some of the more recent episodes of The Simpsons, I'm embarrassed to watch. They're not like what I remember. But the thing was, all right, maybe I was naive, because now you watch some of the old ones, and also, but it was more subtle. It wasn't as in your face. But on the other hand, there are still some positive values. Like, I mean, I don't want to get into the details, but there was an episode recently where Homer was really a role model. So I don't know, like there's, which, most people would be like, Homer Simpson's a role model, like, I mean, he's like a goof. So maybe, I don't know, maybe the fact that he's such a doofus and like, and such a like dumb character, which actually in the recent episodes they've gone away from that more. He has become more of a solid and respectable character. But the thing is like, so that's the question, like, what are we talking about here? Is he, are they representing him as a positive role model with good morals going into a bad place in order to make people like that look dumb? I didn't see that, I really saw that it was he was a heroic figure in a recent episode. Even though I was very dismayed by the episode, I was very uncomfortable with it. But then I reflect back on it, I realized, that's something. And whoever saw it will understand what I mean, and probably know what I'm talking about. I know a lot of people don't watch the new episodes of The Simpsons, but I don't know. But it certainly has taken a turn. It's certainly a different show, and every season has had different approaches, but it's certainly different now, but which is part of its longevity. I mean, I remember, when they were talking about bring back MST3K, they said it would be like Saturday Night Live, where we would get new actors every couple of years, and like so anyway, I don't know. So I don't know. What do you think? Like, do you have to have a particular political view to enjoy a certain genre or a certain show? I don't think so. I mean, I think, a lot of these shows should be apolitical, and even the political shows, I think you can appreciate no matter what your personal politics are. I mean, I certainly always felt that way, that if, and I don't mind a certain self-depreciation, because humility I find to be a great value. I mean, a lot of people always said, well, how come, like the Republicans are always have worse criticism for other Republicans than they do for Democrats. And I think it's to keep us in check. It's self-depreciation. I mean, Obama never has anything bad to say about his own party, and part of being the president is being the leader of your party, and leadership is sometimes criticism. And I might not agree with all the politics of Pope Francis, but I really admire how he's not afraid to criticize to criticize the cardinals, the bishops, the priests, to recognize his leadership role is not just to be a yes man. And it seems like Obama was just a yes man for the Democratic Party. He never had any criticism, and now they're coming out that things that the liberals wanted, his administration turned a blind eye to, like fracking. Like, I know I heard something on the radio, like criticizing Obama. I mean, I tend to support fracking because, if it's done in a responsible way, and I do think there is a responsible way to do it. But anyway, that's besides the point. I mean, I'm not sure about it. I don't know enough about it, and I don't know if I want to believe all the things that are on either side of it. So I'm really kind of keeping in the middle of it. But the fact of the matter is, like, I remember a neighbor of mine is a farmer, and he has a successful farming business. But he says, he doesn't want to take sides in this fracking question because on one hand, I mean, it's banned in New York, so it's a moot point anyway. But like on one hand, people are like, oh, they don't want to see these gas rigs and everything. But like, well, otherwise, what's going to be? Like everyone wants to see these farms and everything. Well, the farms are going to go out of business, So anyway, he's like, everyone wants to see these pastoral, bucolic farms. They're not gonna. They can't exist unless the economy gets better. And the thing is, I mean, one thing he complained to me about is like, as soon as he gets successful to a certain point, he's put into a new tax bracket where it's self-defeating. So I think that's one thing that's positive. If Trump's agenda really works. Like, we know that when Reagan lowered taxes, that revenues went up. So, although Reagan did push some austerity, Trump has no austerity plans at all. He wants to deregulate. He wants to lower taxes. Most likely, just like what happened in Reagan's times, lowering taxes will raise revenues because it will keep more businesses here. Especially so many businesses trying to leave. I think everybody could win, because he's not going to cut spending, So I don't know. Let's see, let's see what happens, So anyway, what are your thoughts about this? Do you have to have a particular political view in order to appreciate certain forms of art or entertainment things? I don't think so. I think a lot of art and entertainment is political, and even those that are political can be appreciated by both sides, and a lot is not political. I mean, it's the same thing even with religion. I mean, I appreciate listening to preachers of different religions, be they Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, wherever they are. It's interesting, I might not agree with everything, but I might gain perspectives of my own faith. I might, gain insights. I might hear a good joke or a good story that I can use in a sermon. Maybe they're preaching on something that is from my tradition, particularly Christians, who we share so much of our traditions together. And they might be preaching on something, and they're not bringing in something Christological into it, and they might bring in a good joke, a good story that I could use. Why not? I mean, I know many of my rabbis have confided in me that they do the same. So that's it. All right, it's getting late. But thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment. Let's see, what do you have to say about this? All right, God bless.